And there are some businesses that are very good in the coronavirus. Bicycle sales are very good. Dog sales and pet sales are very good. Of course, restaurant sales aren't, so you wouldn't want to go in the restaurant business.
Hello and welcome. I am Wendi Blum Weiss. This is Redefine Yourself During Times of Uncertainty. I have a very special guest that I have invited on the show for the last year. He is a retired business owner and he happens to be my husband. Welcome, Harry.
Good afternoon. Nice to be here.
Well, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your background. You share this story often about how you went from working for someone to launching your own business and then eventually being able to retire pretty early on in life. But it was through an obstacle and redefining yourself that happened. So can you share a little bit about your how you got started in the business world?
Wow. Well, that's goes way back to when I graduated college, I guess, and got lucky. I met a man that happened to work for a toy company, and he offered me a job. And that's not exactly true. I applied for a job, and he gave it to me. And I sold Barbie dolls out of college, and then I progressed into a buyer for a department store for about 7 years. And then I guess as the story goes, I wanted to ask for a raise and
Can
told
I
my,
can I ask you a question about the raise? How much of a raise were you asking for?
well, it's a little misleading because this is, 30 years ago, more, 40 years ago. So I was asking for $25, which today is probably $150. But yes, I was asking for $25. And my boss said, can't handle it. And I said, well, I have to quit if you don't give me the raise. And he said, well, in that case, don't let the door hit you in the ass when you walk out. And so I walked out and I started my own business, and it did pretty well.
So what happened? So how did you just start your business? If you were a toy buyer, then how did you get the resources? How did you start your business?
Well, I actually embellished the story a little bit. I didn't quit that day. I quit about a month later. But what I did do was I went on the road on a buying trip for the company I work for, to all my vendors in Pittsburgh. I was in Milwaukee, Cincinnati. All our vendors were mostly in the east part of the country. And I told them I was thinking about leaving, and I have no money. And would you guys, just give me credit? Just a little bit here, a little bit there helps. And they all said, of course, we'll give you credit. And so I went back then, and I resigned. But I didn't resign before I knew that people were going to help me, because it's very hard to be in business unless someone's helping you. Um, Everybody needs help, and I was lucky because I knew a lot of people from my experience buying and selling before that. Selling Barbie dolls. So I was ready to go. My biggest fear, which is kind of silly when I think back on it now, was a cash register. I never worked a cash register before. I was a buyer or a salesman. I never knew about how to push a button. And I remember going, oh my God, how am I going to work this cash register? Which is ridiculous, because when the salesman came to sell me a cash register, it's like a calculator. It was no big deal. But that's what scared me the most. But anyway, then I learned through it. I just learned how to do it as I went through. My only expertise was buying. I knew the toy business, what a toy was worth, and what it would retail for, and the kind of margins I needed. But I didn't know about the bookkeeping or housekeeping with a store, or even merchandising for that matter. I just knew if I bought at the right price, I could sell at the right price. But the other stuff you learn, it's just, it's automatic. And when I think back on it, one time in high school, I took a course in retailing as an elective. And it was kind of a stupid course because it was pretty simple, and they would tell you how to stack a can of Campbell's soup so it looks nice on a grocery store display, which in high school didn't mean too much to me. But then when I got in the retail business, it all kind of made sense what they said about, how to display it and where to put it. And so a lot of it's just common knowledge, common sense. But the other part was you have to know people, and I knew people.
You also share this story about you just looked around for opportunities. So you moved into, and this was sort of when it was hot with these discount, stores. And then you were in this area, Reading, Pennsylvania, and there was a store that hired, or they paid like the bus to stop by with all of these people to make that part of the tour. And then you thought that was a really good idea. So how did that work out for you?
Well, it wasn't my idea. When I moved to Reading, and I actually didn't live in the city. I lived maybe 3 or 4 miles outside the city. And I heard about the outlets. Reading was very famous for their outlets, factory outlets. And at the time, they were the only outlets in the whole country. I mean, now you have them everywhere. Sawgrass, every 3 or 4 exits on 95 is an outlet center. But back in those days, Reading was the only outlet center in the world. But I never saw it. I lived there for 8 years and never saw one. Never saw a bus, never saw a person going into a store, never saw a store. And then when I quit, I really didn't know what to do. So I decided to have a toy store and may as well have it in the outlets. So I took a ride down there one day on a Saturday afternoon, and I just stood in the corner. And I actually had a partner in the beginning. Barry and I just stood there. We watched all these people driving into town, and these buses come into town, and the people would just, walk through the stores and buy things. It was, pretty wild. That's when I decided that I'd like to have an outlet store. And the biggest outlet was Vanity Fair. And I went to Vanity Fair and said, I want to open up a toy store. And they laughed at me because, Vanity Fair was legitimate and all their outlets were real outlets. J. Crew and Tommy Hilfiger and Izod and all big names. And I was, it was nothing. So I couldn't get in there. So I had to get into a different outlet center, which, was basically a closed out place. It wasn't real. It was people like me that opened up stores and just sold merchandise. And, but the key was getting the buses. I mean, the buses where the action was. On a good Saturday afternoon at Christmas, we have 1,000 buses pull into our parking lot. And these people came to shop. They didn't come to steal. They came to steal also. But they weren't window shopping. They weren't just killing the day. They were driving, 3-4 hours to get to us. In some cases, overnight. It was a long trip. And we had to figure out a way to get these buses to come to us. And it's not my idea. This guy, Mike Dunleavy, he discovered the way to do it. He had a little leather shop in the building I was in. And so he would go over to the Vanity Fair parking lot. Now, what these people would do is a local women's club in Baltimore, Maryland, or a sewing club in Rochester, New York, they get together, they'd hire a bus, and they go to Reading, Pennsylvania to shop at Vanity Fair. And I'd pay the bus, whatever they paid them, $100, whatever it was in those days. And that's it. They went to Vanity Fair, and the bus driver got nothing. He got a salary, and whatever he made. And Mike got this idea, we only need the guy for half an hour, 45 minutes in our building. What if we give the bus driver $50 to come visit us? And so we paid the bus drivers off. And not just us, as it grew and other buildings opened up, everybody paid the bus drivers off, except Vanity Fair. They're the only ones that didn't pay. And it got to a point where some of the bus drivers didn't even go to Vanity Fair because they can make more money going to the different outlets and get paid from people like me. They can make themselves $300-400 on a good Saturday. And I think bus drivers back in those days probably made about $75 a day. So they were happy to come to us. And they would tell their people on the bus, you don't want to go to Vanity Fair. You want to go to those other places. And that's how we did it. And we paid the bus drivers off. And just like it's no different now when you go on a tour somewhere, you're on vacation in Naples or California, and you take a bus tour and they stop at certain restaurants. They just don't pick those restaurants out because it's on the road. That bus driver is getting paid to go to those places. And we did basically the same thing. Our biggest problem was in Atlantic City because there's only so many buses. And when Atlantic City opened up back in the 70s, a lot of the people wanted to gamble in Atlantic City. And they took all the buses, or as many buses as they can get. And we had a hard time for a while getting buses. But we did, we worked it out. And that was it. Today, Reading, Pennsylvania is nothing. There's one outlet center there, Vanity Fair. It's half the size it used to be. And all the rest of them, and I say all the rest of them, there are probably another 300 or 400 or 500 stores there, are all closed now. And it's basically a slum. I took you there a couple of years ago. It's hard to believe what was there 30 years ago, because what's there today is a slum. Yeah. And that's what happened.
Amazing. Now, so Can you share with our listeners and viewers what your philosophy was and how you were able to retire early?
Well, I retired at 43. I really retired only because I had no more vendors, and I used to buy mostly from wholesalers that overbought. They overbought. In the toy business, you place your orders for Christmas in February, and there's a lot of new toys that are introduced, and you don't know what's going to sell. And comes around October, and a lot of these wholesalers realize they made a mistake. Now, might have been a mistake in Cincinnati, might have been a mistake in Nebraska, or maybe in San Antonio, Texas, but it wasn't a mistake in Philadelphia because we were the fourth largest TV market in the country. So when these companies sold in, and they promised to buy advertising everywhere, they didn't. They spot advertised. So you could have a doll that in San Antonio that wasn't worth a nickel, where you can get $20 for it in Philadelphia or in Reading, where I was, same market. And so I'd scour the country and find a lot of brand new merchandise. Just people overbought it, that's all. But then in the end, as the Walmarts got bigger and the Targets got bigger and Toys R Us in those days got bigger, it put the wholesalers out of business because these people are all buying direct, right, from the factories.
So you knew that, like you sensed there was a big.
Well, no, I didn't sense it. I couldn't imagine why I was buying this stuff. It was amazing. I call a guy on the phone and I just bought a Barbie doll from Mattel for $10, and this guy's going to sell it to me for $5. And that's not Mattel. He was the guy that was bought it from Mattel. He just wanted to get some of his money back. So I didn't even know what was happening. But I just, I'll give you $5 for it. In a Monopoly game, I'll give you $4 for it. And I kept buying this stuff, and then I was doing pretty well, actually. And then one day I woke up and I go, Dave, oh, I'm sorry, I'm out of business. And I go, Gary, oh, I'm sorry, I'm out of business. I had nobody to buy from. So I was 43 and I said, all right, I'm done. And then I thought about it and I said, I'm not going to work for somebody else, because once you work for yourself, you can't work for somebody else. And if you're going to start a new business, like when I started this business 10 years before that, you got to work hard. I mean, you just don't do nothing like I do now, but you got to work hard. And I didn't want to work hard anymore. I just said, to hell with it. I don't want to work hard anymore. So I put the money back in those days in the stock market, and the stock market did pretty good in the 80s and 90s. And that was it. I haven't worked, that's it. I don't have to.
But it wasn't always straight up. There was like a time you were really, it could have gone either way, right? Because then the stock market went down.
No, it wasn't that I was a genius. I was no genius at all. It's just back in the .com days, from 95, I guess, till about 2000, you could throw a dart against the wall to pick a stock. I mean, that's about what happened. And then when the market crashed, the market crashed in, I think it was 99 to 2000, I forget. I think it was 99. Anyway, when it crashed, I was really doing well. I put a lot of money in the bank, or had a lot of money in the market. And I told myself, if I ever lose a third of it, I'm getting out. And sure enough, I lost a third of it. And I got out. Then I got back in a little bit a couple of years later, but then I got back then I was buying real estate. I was flipping houses. I was always doing something. Or I built a couple of houses in the Hamptons. So I was always doing something. But in the last, I don't know, I guess 10 years, I'm doing nothing. I do nothing.
But your philosophy is to, like, when you make a little bit of a profit, like, get out. Like, don't go for don't be greedy. Like, don't go for too much.
It's actually a slogan for that. A quick nickel is better than a slow dollar. And that was my philosophy in business. And my philosophy now is, I have everything I want. Luckily, I don't want a lot. Like I drive a Volvo. Now, if I want, I could buy a Mercedes, but I'm okay with the Volvo. I just like to know I have the money if I want to buy a Mercedes. Is there? There was a TV show on recently with Michael Douglas called The Kaminsky Method, and somebody asked him once about why does he have a pastrami sandwich in his refrigerator, and he says, I can't eat pastrami anymore. He says, I'm not healthy and it's not good for you. But I buy one every 3 or 4 days and I put it in there just because If I want to eat it someday, it's there. And that's how I feel about my life. If I want to do something different, I can do basically anything I want to do. But luckily, I don't have to fly first class. I'm very happy flying coach.
Well,
And
for anybody who's watching, who's maybe just starting out in business or going through a difficult time or transitioning, what words of wisdom would you have for a younger person or someone midlife right now?
well, right now is a tough time because it's the coronavirus, but you'd have to pick up something that, and there are some businesses that are very good in the coronavirus. Bicycle sales are very good. Dog sales and pet sales are very good. Of course, restaurant sales aren't, so you wouldn't want to go in the restaurant business. But there's a lot of industries that are profiting very big and growing very largely because of Corona. One of those cases is my daughter Kim. She opened up a wellness center, and her business is based part of it's based on growing your immune system, and they have drips like vitamin drip. So they put a intravenous into your arm and they shoot you with vitamin C or D, whatever you want for your immune system, zinc maybe, and she's doing very well.
Yeah.
And we have another friend that's a dog trainer. She's doing phenomenal because people are buying dogs. So you have to find a business that makes sense right now with the virus. But will the virus last forever? Probably not, but it's a good place to start, I guess. It's different times. It's a different world today. It's a different world than it used to be. You wouldn't want to have a toy store today because no one goes in stores. You might want to have a toy online store somehow, Toys Inc. or Toys.com, maybe that way, but stores, there's no sense going to retail business anymore because they don't exist.
Well, thank you so much for those words of wisdom. And to my other half, my handsome, amazing husband, thank you so much for being on this show today. And thank you everyone for watching.
And invite me again. Thank you.